If you had to give something value, absolute value, what would it be? Gold? Bread? What would you put absolute value? You had to give something a real value. So let me tell you a little story. In the book called Sparks of Glory by Moshe Prager, he wrote this book after the war, his recount of stories he heard from survivors. Powerful book, Sparks of Glory. He relates the following story. A yid named Siberiak. No, he wasn't from Siberia, but that was what he was called after spending his war years in Siberia. And this Siberiak, he was recounting, he says, I thought gold was a value, and I thought bread was a value, but I realized neither of them were value. He says, because when you're hungry, and you can have gold, but you have no food, you begin to feel a spiritual hunger, which if satisfied, can even sustain you physically. And here's Siberiak's story. He says, I was sent to Siberia to covered with snow and ice to a gold mine. And when I got there, I was thrilled. I couldn't believe it. Gold everywhere, no guards, nothing. And every day I would hide a little piece of gold I'd take back with me. Nobody would see it. I put it into my pouch, and I would dream of the gold, the riches I would have when I got out of that place. And one day, one of my bunkmates saw what I was doing, and he started laughing. He gathered the group, they were laughing at me. He said, here, gold is of no value. And when I internalized that, oh, did I have a hunger? All of a sudden, my mind left the gold, and I was so hungry, and there was no bread. And I started dreaming of bread, and there was no bread. My mind drifted to cigarettes. If I can get a piece of paper here. Oh, the value of a piece of paper. You see, in Siberia, these people were illiterate. They weren't interested in paper. If I could get a piece of paper, inhale that smoke, the pleasure I'd get for those few moments, and that's what kept my mind off my hunger. Mail came to this part of Siberia twice a year. In the dead of the winter, there was a delivery. You heard the bells ringing. And some peasant got a letter from his son who went to fight in the army. They taught him how to read and write, and he sent back a letter. Guy couldn't read it. So he found me, a learned Jew, said, Siberia, come read for me this letter. I read him the letter, and for my reward, he gave me the envelope. Dropped it on the floor, yeah, take the envelope. My prized possession. I smuggled it back into my room, made sure no one was around, took out the letter, and I was ready to roll it. And then I noticed there was letters in there, black letters. A closer look, so that was a piece of a siddur. I couldn't roll it. I took that piece of siddur and I took him to our Rebbe that we had in town. This was one of us slaves who he busied himself with making the calculations when Shabbos was, when Yom Tov would come. And I showed him this piece and he started crying. A piece of a siddur here in Siberia. We gathered together on Shabbos and Yom Tov and we read from it. And we take turns. He says, I remember Siberia, I remember exactly what it said on it. It started with the end of Oz Yashir, went through Yishtabach, Kaddish, Baruch Hu, beginning of Birchas Kriya Shema. And we read that, and that infused us with some spirituality, some connection. That fed us. That sustained us. Tefillah la'oni ki yatev. V'lifnei Hashem yishpoich sichai. What's the prayer of an ani? What's our prayer when we feel like we're lost? We can't even connect. The Baal Shem Tov gives a mashal. He says a king comes to town and he says, you can have whatever you'd like. People line up. One asks for wealth. One asks for kavod. One chacham comes and he says, King, I'd like the opportunity to talk with you. How about in the morning we go for a coffee, in the afternoon we talk over tea, and at night, a nice and warm cup of milk. The king is astonished. You want to talk with me? Sure, I'd be delighted. Tefillah la'ani kiyata, if when an ani comes to daven, what's his tefillah? Lifnei Hashem yishpeich sichai. Let me talk to you, Hashem. Give me the opportunity to talk to shmuz. Because what's absolute value? Sabiriak said it wasn't gold, and it's not bread. Because when you're starving, and there's no bread to find, if you can fulfill yourself, if you can fill yourself up with some spirituality, that can sustain you. Vayigash Elav Yehuda, which we darshan, when a Yid comes close, when he's coming to the king, he asks, Vayemer bi Adoni, please my master, Yedaber na avdecha davar ba'aznei Adoni, give me the opportunity to speak with you. A new way to look at tefillah. We come to daven, it's an opportunity. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, please, let us talk to you. Let us have a shmuz. Let us speak. Vayigash Elav Yehuda. When we're coming, let's daven. Let it sustain us.